There's
Hi,
one.
everyone. You are very, very welcome back to another podcast of the Spirit Channel. As always, I'm your host, Zenith. I think both myself and my guests can account for that I haven't been abducted by any negative greeters. Although we did come close there, thankfully. But today, my lovely guest is someone who I'm very familiar with, someone who I consider a dear friend, someone who makes me laugh, and someone who is extremely interesting. If you think that I've had an interesting life, you need to hear this guest story. It is the lovely Sonia. Sonia, very, very warm welcome, and what an honor it is to have you as my guest.
Zenith, thank you so much for that. You're so kind. Yes, this is so exciting, and it's very exciting to be able to speak to you face to face. We came together, bonded over WordPress and the Law of One.
Yes, our common blogs. I guess
Yeah.
I should just mention that actually, some of your background is in blogging. That's how we actually met. You run a blog yourself. It's childofhamelin.com, and that is where you publish your stories of what we're going to talk about today. I put you down as a kind of one second, a UFO or extraterrestrial or interdimensional experiencer. I don't know if that's quite maybe the words that you would use to refer to it yourself. But again, that's what you're here for. You're here to enlighten us. You're here to share. So it's really great. And I know that you have videos, you have documentary evidence of some of the phenomena that has taken place in your home. So this is actually going to be a first today, where we're actually going to have live within the podcast some of this video that you've managed to shoot. So just brilliant. So just without further ado, just let us know who you are. Give us a bit of your background. What has led you to these crazy experiences? How did you come across this? Were you an ordinary child? Are you indeed an alien?
I would really like to know what I truly, truly am. Okay, so my name is Sonia. I'm a 60-year-old woman. I live with my life partner in Oregon, and I currently don't work outside of the home. Most of my time is spent in research, blogging, and meditation, just spiritual practices. So basically, when I was very, very young, at first, the first memory that I have is a before life experience. Now, most of my life, I didn't have a context for before life experience. I just had this memory of floating into my body when I was young. The imagery around that time is me at the age of 3. So
Mm.
I thought, did I leave my body and come back at age 3, or what was this? It was just something that was always there. But the thing for me as a child and then later on as an adult was the realization that I was somewhere before I was here, before I was this. And so I always held to the fact that, why is everyone so worried about where they go when they pass away? You're just going back to where you were before you got here. Real easy, guys. And it was really phenomenal to me. I mean, I didn't like funerals because of that. I was really confused about why people were so depressed when it came to death. And I had no way to really, or context for explaining that. So it was just something I kept in my head. It wouldn't be until I discovered near death experience stories. And there was I don't remember who the woman was that was doing this particular talk, but she had gone into talking about young children that may pass away, and we don't even know they pass, coming through the birth canal or what have you, and then having a near death experience and they're coming back. And she also equated that with people do have before life experiences. Some of us have that little bit of memory, which is a peek under the veil.
Mm.
And I guess for me, that it was a marker for me. So that later in life, I guess I was in my 50s when I really started getting into the spiritual stuff. Later in life, I start to see more, I start to understand that as a concept of me coming into my body. And then Later, I have a second experience, what I call, this is definitely experience, because I was not, even though all the adults wanted me to believe that I was dreaming, I knew I wasn't dreaming. And this is the contact story that I talk about on my website that I have outlined there. And essentially, what it was, I was sleeping and woke up, but my eyes weren't open yet. Just woke up to this, to being awake, about to open my eyes, and I hear, and I'm going to have to describe how I get this information. For me, I hear more the words in my head: don't open your eyes or you're going to see something scary. So I immediately open my eyes, because I never listen to authority figures. And uh, I immediately open my eyes. There they are. They're flying up from beside the bed. There was a little gap between my bed and the wall. So coming up through there is what I see. Is it, to me, it looks like a granddaddy long leg spider just coming up and then floating over my bed. I was deathly afraid of spiders. And this is me at the age of 4. So I was deathly afraid of spiders. And I freaked out, threw the covers up, needed to get to my sister's bed, which was right next to mine, to tell her so she could save me. And I did make it there. And she, of course, wanted me to just go to mom and dad. She didn't want me waking her up. I peeked out from under the covers to make sure it wasn't there again, and I didn't see anything. And so I ran into the hallway, into my parents' doorway, where I see this, what to me looks like a granddaddy long leg, floating right toward their bed. So let out one of those beautiful high-pitched screams that only a 4-year-old girl can do. And never seen my parents move so fast ever since. But they jumped out of bed, grabbed me, comforted me, figured it was a dream, put me back to bed with my sister, and left the lights on. And so my sister was covered in the blankets because the lights were on. She went back to sleep. My parents went back to sleep. And that's when even more stuff began to happen. So I began to see something in the door jamb. You can see a door jamb right behind me here. If you imagine, I'm looking through that as a child, and I see something peeking through the door. And I can't figure out what it is. So I lift up to look, and it will move back in. Every time I lift up, it moves back. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of neat. I pull the covers up really tight. I'm smart enough at 4 to know that it could be the covers doing this. So I pull them up really tight, and it comes out again. I lift up, and it goes back in. And I realize at some point that I know what's going to happen before it actually happens. And I'm getting, now this is different than the voices that said I would be scared. It's different than that. This is more like a melding of information. It's like you just know it. And I knew that what was behind that door, and I was assuming one individual, I was thinking it's an individual, but I knew that what was behind it was sorry that I had been frightened, was very apologetic, was comforting and protective. So and I'm curious. I want to know what it is. And I know at some point that it's going to show me something. And it's not something I get to keep or hold, but it's something that I will see. And that's when, through the door jamb, you see I see a series of orb lights going by there. I called them at the time ribbons of light, because they were long and they were kind of moving like that. But they were in uniform all down the hall, because I could see down my hall. And then they would flip around and come back the other side, and then go back into that spare room that was on the other side of that door jamb. And I was delighted by that. I knew that that was to make me feel better. And so I was grateful for that. But then I really wanted to know what was on the other side of that door. And it appeared to me that there was something going on, as if there was some sort of bargaining or negotiation about what can we show her? Can we show her something else? And this is when I get an idea. There's is there more than one there? But I still think, no, just one. And so I'm like, but I want to know who you are. I want to know who you are. And I'm still getting this feeling like something's reluctant to show me, but all of a sudden I realize I'm going to get to see something. And so I'm very excited now. I'm really just childlike excited. When right through the door jamb comes a hand, exactly like this, because it was the left hand, it was a human hand, and it did twinkle fingers like that and went right back in. I was delighted. There was a person on the other side of that door, as far as I was concerned. After that hand went in, that was when my dad woke up. And that was the story, and the way the story stayed most of my life until about 2020. It was just this something on the other side of the door, and they sent me a bunch of lights.
That's, I mean, there's so much there that, really to unpack and to really question. You could go any number of ways in this here, but I guess the things that stand out to me, first of all, are because most people can't even remember. They might remember one or two memories when they're before. To remember that amount of detail, because I was expecting maybe just like, okay, well, remember something that's here, but that's about it. But to just have no kind of interruption there for about 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, and just have this whole length of spiel of all these kind of memories is pretty incredible from the age of 4. So I guess the question then would be, first of all, did you remember? Well, you did mention that up until about 20, so you have those vivid memories from the age of 4, and you carry them pretty much exactly how you said right up until the age of 20. You remember all that when you were 4, before some children can even talk properly, before some children can even walk properly, before some children even can comprehend the world around them. That's pretty incredible. That is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a sticking memory. And I realized recently it was probably sticking there so I would continually go back to it.
Mm.
And try to figure it out. Because I had, from that point, after that happened, of course, nobody believed me. I mean, why would you believe the silly things a 4-year-old's going to say? But in that disbelief, I don't want to say somebody else was harming me. It's not their fault, but I absorbed it and convinced myself, not that it didn't happen, but that I couldn't talk about it anymore after a certain point. Because I tried through my life. When I was 4, I got shut down pretty quickly, but I was able to speak to my sister a little bit about it before she passed away. And she said, yeah, you were always talking about the man, because I used to call it the man. And so it was always there. And when the orbs began to show up in my digital pictures and in my digital videos, it still took a few years of me filming them consistently before I went, oh, wait a minute. The way that this orb is moving is the way that Daddy Longleg moved. And then to start to slowly dismantle what may have happened in that first thought form that I was given to see something scary. The one thing I'm afraid of is spiders, so that's what I see. And then I had to do a lot of work on my own self first to ever get to the point where I believe my guide said, it's time for you to see this. And it was through meditation, several kinds of meditation, deep meditation, and specifically asking to go into that memory and see what's happening just before I wake up and hear that. And that's where I see the gray beings. I'm in an astral point, if that makes any sense, looking down on my memory. So it's not a memory like, oh, I remember this now. It is, I was being given the gift to see what else was there.
Yeah, well, once again, so much to unpack there. I was going to say, well, I guess a lot of people would doubt that because, well, you were just a child and children imagine things all of their lives. But the fact that you've said that, more phenomena came into your life, these orbs and stuff like that, and then, after several years of filming them, then you began to make the connections with what you experienced as a child. So therefore, there was no doubt about it. But up until that point, did you ever doubt yourself?
Oh, yes.
Because I guess like a lot of people who experience phenomena, I'm thinking of myself as well, because I didn't understand it, because I didn't know what I was experiencing, because I had no one to explain to me or even talk about this sort of stuff. I just thought it was normal. Everybody kind of sees it. And then kind of progressing no further with it, I just kind of accepted that the world that we perceive with our five physical senses is just all that there is to the world. So for me, I shut all of that down, and it wasn't until my awakening that I began to re-experience, things outside of, the normal kind of five physical senses, or what we can perceive in the visible light spectrum. Then I began to understand, oh, right, so those things that I seen years ago, are something special, if you like. They're not everyone can see them, or only people who have awakened or have that gift or ability can see them. So for me, I shut all that down. Was there ever a point in your life that, you went, oh, that's all nonsense, forget about it. I've got to make my way in this world.
Yes, absolutely. I became an atheist at about the age of 13, and stayed that way. And I was one of those rude atheists where you couldn't say the word Jesus without me lighting up a cigarette in your face and then walking out of the room. Very, that was the worst. That was the worst. and, today, Jesus is good with me today, because I came back to him at the very end of my spiritual awakening. Jesus was the last one I embraced. But there were reasons for that. And I see that now. And it's pretty cool. But no, there was a lot of doubt. And I simply didn't see anything for many years. Although I had a belief in this other dimensional world, my issues with God, Jesus, Christianity kept me from being able to explore the other world, because then you got to admit there's God or creator, and I couldn't do that yet. So I limited myself for about 35 years, and my life was absolutely a reflection of that lack of spirituality. From just I could not hold on to a relationship to save my life. Many my to this day, I've got one son that talks about the revolving door that his life was with mom's boyfriends. There was a lot of drinking, drugging. I had a tendency to get into abusive jobs as well. Abusive relationships, abusive jobs, abusing myself. And I'm starting to try to understand why I had to destroy myself so much. I'm not there yet, but that's one of the things that I'm working on. And again, you start coming back I guess it was my practitioner that really started opening me up to this. Started out in just trauma therapy in the 90s, because I had severe PTSD from former job and just my childhood. But she just happened to be somebody, and I didn't know about this kind of work, but she did energy work, and she didn't do medication. I'm going to a therapist, and I'm not going to get stuck on medication. Cool. I'll go see her. It was also somebody that a friend trusted. So because she trusted her, I felt I could. And it was the best person I could have gone to see. And I hope one day she sees this and can hear that, because she literally opened my eyes and she was a hold your space therapist. I had to do all the work myself. And she did do muscle testing. So that was how we were able to validate many things. But it was with her that the memory of coming into my body, my before life experience, the first time I ever really talked about it to somebody was to her. And that's when she mentioned that, you might be a wanderer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'd never heard that term. "Oh, really? What's a wanderer?" And she's like, "Well, soul that comes from another star system and an old soul." It was just kind of basic, and, "Oh, okay." I don't even think I looked it up for a couple of years after that. But some of the things that she did with me were, EMDR was the big one. That was first. That's eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Okay.
Very, very good for trauma, for people who have suffered trauma, to help you find what the original trauma was that led to, like, these other traumas. And I had one session of that, one, and it worked so phenomenally. We were able to target an originating trauma for me. There's others, of course, but we were able to do that. And I was sold on energy work then. Later on would come things like tapas, emotional freedom technique, so many others. And I kind of saw this practitioner off and on for the first 10 years, off and on. I'd go for a few months and then stop and, get her paid off, things like that. When my disability came through, because I had to go on to disability, I decided at that point, and this is in 2008, toward the end of 2008, I am going to take this shamanic, this client practitioner relationship seriously. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to learn who I really am and where I'm going. I had made that commitment to myself. I don't think I even told her that. And then in 2009 is when things start showing up big time. I showed her many of these pictures and videos and things, and she too did not know exactly what it was, although we had an understanding of orbs and that they're around and how we've seen them, behind the saints and things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, the halos.
Yes, yes.
Mm, very interesting.
But no real good idea of what you have in muscle testing. You need to be asking the appropriate question, or you need to make the query in the right way. So to just muscle test, okay, their spirit, it would always come up yes. But then again, if I muscle test myself, I'm spirit, that will come up yes. If I muscle test the lamp is spirit, it will come, because everything is spirit.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of trial and error when it comes to muscle testing. And over time, I was able to, as I got more information also from others out there in the ufology community, they did begin to talk more and more about orbs and what they are, and how long our governments have actually been working with orb technology, things like that. So it's not a big secret. It's there. I think it's kind of a psyop to tell people or to put out there that it's dust. Oh, it's probably dust. So just ignore it. Because after 1,000 videos, eh, dust? I got a really dusty house then.
I guess. So then, what changed then? Okay, so you've sort of become awakened. You're doing all this muscle testing and all this sort of stuff, and you're getting drip fed information. So then, what changed? Then what changed about the way in which you remembered this phenomena that you experienced? What changed about it from your initial understandings up until this kind of heightened awareness or whatever, if you want to call it that?
So in 2018 and 2019, I was, at this time, I moved from being a client of the shamanic practice to
Mm-hmm.
learning to be a practitioner. So, and we would go out to a reserve place out in the woods, and that's where we did our training. Beautiful place, sacred Indian land, and things started happening more there. As a matter of fact, the first trip I even took there, I started seeing things coming up out of the ground that I didn't understand. Body, people, bodies, different things, and I even went and told my practitioner this. They went off to kind of work on. I never really got a clear answer as to what was going on there, but
Mm-hmm.
just told that kind of thing happens, I guess. There were many experiences in those 2 years as well that happened. that just were different than I had seen before. I'm seeing more. I could see angelic beings in my third eye that were standing behind other students. There was one student in particular that felt she couldn't see her angels or feel her angels. And I had been encouraged to speak up if I see things. So I said, well, it's standing right behind you. I see it and I've seen it before. And then there was a pause and suddenly the light bulb went out and right over her, right over above her. So hopefully that was evidence for her. But things like that were happening, which were really, really kooky. And I could I was also, my sister is dying at this time. She has cancer and she's very, very sick. But I am also seeing my sister standing out the windows of where I'm at. I'm like, okay, my sister's still alive. How am I seeing her? Not understanding that you can see somebody else's higher self if those permissions were given before you ever got here. That kind of thing can happen. So I just didn't understand it and didn't get it. But in 2020, when I was supposed to be going into my very last level master practitioner class, it got canceled because pandemic. And I was really disappointed. And I so wanted to be studying something esoteric spirituality all the time. So I just started signing up for webinars and things like that and reading. For some weird reason, I was suddenly able to read 6 books at once. Well, what had happened is because we were on a break and we couldn't go do our training, the shamanic, the teachers, the 2 heads of it, had come up with a blessing for the students in early 2020. So this is April. She called me up, asked me if I wanted the blessing. I said, yeah, sure. And so it's something we did right over the phone. I cannot even remember the words in the blessing, although I know it was something where we're setting our intention for highest good, things like that. It was, and she did say after that, she says, so let me know what happens after this blessing. We're kind of wanting to track what's happening with people after this. Hung up the phone, searing pain in my lower back, like I was being twisted, the most painful pain. And I knew enough, though, to ask if it was Kundalini rising. And so I checked that, and it was. For the next, I don't know how long this goes, Zenith. I have to go through my journals to find out when I kind of came out of this very surreal state. But I'm highly energetic. I'm talking 900 miles an hour to anybody that will listen to me. I am seeing energies come in and I'm feeling them big time. I'm feeling all this energy. What is going on? I'm muscle testing them that there's too much energy in my bedroom, going around with an EMF detector and it's going off the charts on everything. I have to move my computers, light bulbs, crystals, everything just to get peace in my bedroom, and doing a lot of meditations. In my the first meditation I do after this blessing, I get taken up into the sky. I think this is just in my head and back down again. And it was when I was up there, it was like I was in the roof of the Sistine Chapel. I could see down, I could see clouds below me, and there were others up there with me. And then boom, I'm down again. I'm like, whoa, did that really happen? Shoom, I'm up there again. And this time I have a couple more seconds, but no, I'm too busy looking down because it's beautiful to look down at everything. Shoom, I'm down again. And so I did some work around that yes, I did go somewhere and was brought back. What has happened in that time? I don't know. And I am losing time in this kind of period, but I'm not really clear how I'm losing it or where it is because we're in lockdown. So everything's weird. Mm-hmm. The next experience I have, again, in a kind of a meditative state, I'm moving this way out of my body. I'm leaving. I'm gone. I'm going back to where I began, to where I was before I got here. And I know I'm going there. And I got no problem leaving here. I don't miss anybody in my family. I don't miss my friends. I don't need a cigarette or a coffee or anything. I'm good. I'm going back to where I was before I was born. I'm great. And then that kind of stops. and I go back. And I know I gotta go back. There's no doubt about it. I gotta go back. It's okay. That's fine. I'm just going back. And I'm back in my body. And that was another one where I started muscle test. This is where I start getting really serious, not on just my muscle testing, but my intuition. Going first to the intuition and then muscle testing the validity of the intuition. What I was intuiting was that I just got an experience of death and coming back. I ask, am I physically in some sort of trouble here? And I'm getting yeses. So I finally break it down. I'm going through spiritual, other people, things like that. I finally get it down to the medical. And that's where it gives me the yes. There's some medical issue going on with me. Okay. So then we get into the third thing that happens. And this is what I want to call the spiritual war over my head. I am in meditation and I'm hearing this roaring sound. It's what I would think space would sound like if we were just standing out there. It's just kind of a roaring kind of sound. And I'm feeling the energies, feeling these energies. And I start to hear in the way of the melding here, the telepathic hearing. We have arrived. We are sorry about the rough landing. We are in the first wave. There might be some other things they said in there. And then in my mind's eye, one of the guides that I had most recently identified hops into my imagery, and she's a blade runner. She's on blades. And she's running across the country from the West Coast to the East Coast. This is weird. This is so weird. What is that? And that was it. But it felt like a kind of a spiritual war happening over the top of me. And like my guides were coming in and saying, no, you bad guys are not going to get a hold of her. And I ask questions, and through meditation, I'll ask the questions and then muscle test them after meditation. So in the meditation, it was more that, yes, this planet is in a spiritual war. We do have negative factions that would prefer to control the positive factions. They don't want to see us ascend. They don't want to see us in fourth density. And that is what everything is all about, is getting us through this without going the way of Atlantis or Noah. And so I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, well, how? Because I'm not getting like information. They're not telling me what my disease is. What's my disease?
Yeah.
They won't tell me. And I ask, why won't you just tell me what's going on with me? And this is how they say it. You won't believe us. So we have to do it through the earthly matter, through earthly ways that you will believe. You will believe things that you read and that you can, fact check, that kind of stuff. We have been all your life leading you to certain books, certain readings, certain people, certain places, and we'll continue to do so with this condition. Game on. I was like so into that. I could not explain this to others, though. It was every time I tried to talk about it, blah, 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 like that. It just never came out right. And so even my own practitioner, I don't think she fully understood what was happening, because I stopped my sessions and I stopped seeking to become a practitioner. Because the other part of the message was, stop. You are not in a place to be working on other people. You haven't had enough time to learn enough to be able to do this. And I really loved the work, loved working with other people, and loved seeing them find their spiritual connection. But it's true. Like a day before my appointment, I would start to go into state on them not on me, on them. And so it's taking up a lot of time. I'm having less and less time to work on myself because I go into state 24 hours before I'm supposed to meet with them. And so I began to understand that. But I still, and I will argue with my guides, I still tried to do it. I kept going all the way through, I believe, July. I kept trying to go and have sessions with other clients because they were letting me come in their house and stuff. They weren't locking everybody out. But I would get sick, physically ill every time that I did one until I stopped.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's quite an experience and quite a journey. As I said, like, I can really understand why people say you talk about 90 million miles an hour because you just don't come up for a breath. And every time I go, I must ask her about this. You've moved about 5 steps and go, what was it I wanted to ask her? So yeah, that's it's, I don't know what to say. It's just an incredible journey that you're on. That I can really relate to most of it. I can really relate to the awakening and receiving the messages and the experiences and feeling the energy and all this other kind of phenomenon that you're kind of going through, because I've went through it myself, and it is absolutely incredible and does keep you hungry for more. Even those experiences where you're out of your body and you're in the astral realm, and
Yeah.
you're still in two states at once. I guess you're in your body but you're somewhere else. It's hard to believe. It really is. You go to yourself, because there's not too much literature, I guess, or we don't really come across this sort of stuff. It's only when we're awakened, when we're going through it, then you start coming across things that validate your experience. Oh, right, okay, but that was real. Now I can think. But at the time, you're going, I don't know if that's real. I don't believe it or not. So I can really understand it. I guess, so about the illness then, where are you in that stage? Have you got that diagnosed? Have you understood exactly what it is that you have and why you have it? Was it some sort of catalyst that maybe you're meant to go through? Is it some sort of condition that's treatable? Is it something that you realize that maybe you're under some form of attack or something?
Oh, all of those are such great questions. Let's take the attack first, though. As far as like a continuing attack, I almost have to say no, only because of how many clearings, prayers, healings, and things like that that I've been through. However, I think it's there for a reason, and the reason being what's happening today. So, in the manner that the guide said, they would guide me to certain materials. Something that came across my feed, I think it was on Twitter at the time, was a book by Judy Mikovits. And she's quite maligned right now, and has been. And I guess, people will do that. But
Judy,
yes,
yeah, do
she
you just want to explain who she is, just for anyone who doesn't know?
Yes, Judy Mikovits is do I have the book up here? I don't. She is the author of many books describing her work as a biochemist, I believe, in immunology, and how viruses or gain of function types are uh, basically used as weapons, and just sloppily kept. So there's a lot of accidents that happen with them because she worked in the field, and I believe she actually created these herself, so she knows about them. She was also doing some work on something called chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, she's not a chronic fatigue researcher, she's a cancer researcher who's doing this project. And she discovered that there was a type of virus that may be linked to certain diseases like chronic fatigue syndrome, multiple sclerosis, lupus, fibromyalgia, and the list goes, rheumatoid arthritis, list goes on. Our good friend Carla had rheumatoid arthritis, yes. And that it was actually, or could be, something called an XMRV, a xenotropic mouse-related leukemia virus.
Okay.
And that there are many of these, and that some of them are just common viruses that we know about. One of them being the monovirus or Epstein-Barr virus. Now, it was up to page 50 in the book Plague, where I think that's where I saw it say that Epstein-Barr virus has been linked to multiple myeloma, which is a cancer. That's the cancer my sister died from. My sister, there was no business to have that cancer in her body in the way that we think of why people get cancer, right? She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she wasn't a drugger, she was, she lived a clean and normal life. And it's a cancer that is usually found in men in their late 70s, not in women in their mid 50s. It was 15 months from diagnosis until we lost her. It was incredibly violent, incredibly painful. And when I saw that in the book, that's one of those moments where you get taken out by your knees, because I knew the name Epstein-Barr virus related to a condition that I had had since the 90s called restless leg syndrome. It was also called Epstein-Barr syndrome way back in the 90s. They kind of dropped that name. So, and I was never able to get really good treatment or information about the restless leg stuff. I was told it was genetic. I would talk to my family about it. But in reality, because my behaviors were so bad for 35 years, much of the way people view my illness is that I just brought it on myself because I did bad things. I toxified my own body. But what I was able to determine in 2020 was no, I had mono as a baby. My sister and I both had it. And it would replicate between my sister, my mother, and I. It would just, all three of us would get it. And we were constantly giving my mother strep throat. So that's why doctors had mine and my sister's tonsils taken out, so that we would stop this replication. It was something they knew about back in the 60s and early 70s, but somehow left the public health sphere because they stopped doing tonsillectomies too after a point. So I was able to determine that the mono had been from a very, very long time ago. And it says in the research that you're either born with it or you get it first as a baby. Then it reactivates throughout your life. It's in that expression of reactivation that it starts to drive disease or trigger disease. And I may not be using the right terms. I'm not a scientist, but it can trigger it. So if you look at my sister's cancer and then you look at my mother's dementia, which is an unusual dementia, it's 25 years long right now. Dementias usually only last like 8 to 10 years. She has an unusual one. That is also in the book as being linked to Epstein-Barr virus. So for me, I was like, holy cow. But I knew there was a test, so I wanted to have the test done. And I was also at the same time, and this is hard for even me to believe, the same time I'm getting this information, I'm also getting sicker and sicker. Now, not with anything upper respiratory, but it's in my legs, my feet. I'm not able to walk. I'm having a lot of stomach pain, a lot of irritable bowel syndrome kind of symptoms. At the same time, I'm trying to read this stuff. I'm still not thinking that they're related, really. I'm just kind of like, oh, wow, that's weird that they're connected. So I go and I have the test done. And I thought it was just a positive, negative test. Pretty sure it would come back negative and I could just go on my way. You silly little thing. You think you're listening to angels? No, you're not. You're just talking to yourself. But then the test came back. And my numbers.
I don't know why this phone is doing this. Sorry. That's us.
And so my numbers were off the charts. She refers to something called an abnormal antibody response, which I could never get a definition of either out of her book or on the internet in 2020. No, when I saw my test, I knew that that's what she meant, because you have a range of numbers that the antibody should fall into, and it shouldn't be over like 18. Mine were up in the 300s and 600s, depending on which test. That's when I knew that it was. And then I learned in this time too, because I'm reading lots of people, not just her, learn about chronic active Epstein-Barr virus, also something they call recurring mono. And that is my condition. It's supposed to be rare. Only 1% of the population supposedly has this, but is something rare if 3 people in one family have it? And then if you look at my mother's family in Puerto Rico, that's the side of the family that gets the cancer and the diabetes and the fibromyalgia and the chronic fatigue syndrome and the MS and the lupus. And when you look at the history of Puerto Rico and you know that it's been a place that's been toxins were tested on, you kind of go, okay, this is starting to make some sense. Where I was able to pull it all in, though, with ufology and not just esoteric spirituality, was when I discovered Kathleen Martin, who is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. And I had listened to her do an interview with a guy named Whitley Strieber, I believe his name is pronounced, in which she was describing different commonalities with people who have had either contact or abduction, and one of those commonalities being recurring mono.
Wow.
So to me, it's like that's full circle. And the angels were telling me back in that big fugue state, you need to connect what's happening today with what happened in your childhood. Start looking at that, because I was always reluctant to look at my early childhood stuff under my shamanic practitioner. And so that's where it brought me full circle.
Wow, what an amazing story. That was exactly going to be my next question to you. How does that relate, to to the phenomenon that you're receiving, to the phenomenon you're experiencing? Why, I guess, obviously just for concern, but why would these beings, to be telling you to stop concentrating on your shamanic work, and you've got this illness, and obviously now you've just kind of explained it. That's pretty phenomenal. But why? I guess that, because there's a couple of different questions, but why is this a common trait? Have you understood that? Is there research, or is there an answer to that for people who have had contact or have had abduction experiences to end up with these conditions? Is this a direct result of this, contact of these abduction experiences, or is it simply, I don't know, genetic, or, as you say, the background that you've kind of come from? Because if that's the case, it would, to the layman, I guess, to someone who isn't versed in, contact experiences in UFOlogy, it would seem that these beings are far from benevolent. That they're, potentially carrying out experiments, or, something like along them lines.
So we've always, in every group, we've got good and bad. We've got positive and negative. I do believe that there have been negative experiments done on mass numbers of people on this planet as a means of keeping us away from our spirituality so that we don't ascend.
Mhm.
At the same time, there's also others in the field that say there are benevolent ones that have been experimenting with us, and they use viruses to do this sometimes. I don't have a real clear basis on this yet. This is something that is coming through various channels and some of the people in the secret space program, that field, that have an understanding of there's been some genetic stuff going on with the Earth human forever. We've always been worked on. In the Voyager series books, they actually do go into quite a bit of detail about how it can be negative or positive abductions and contacts happening.
Could
And
you just,
that
who is it that wrote the Voyager? Just in case there's a number of Voyager books out there and people pick up
Yes,
something.
there are.
What are we reading about going on a cruise?
There are. That's the work by Ashayana Dean. and the Guardian Alliance. So that's some very interesting reading if you can get through it. It's kind of dense too, but that helped me to understand that you can be both physically abducted and contacted and astrally abducted and contacted, that there are things within our soul contracts. So before we ever get here, that our higher self may have made the decision that we could be astrally abducted in order to give us counseling, guidance, shore us up, whatever that may be. And yet, then there's the not so helpful beings that will do the other kind of experiments that are violating free will because they don't have permission from the higher self, but they are coming in specifically to keep us from reaching that spiritual zen that we're trying to get to.
Okay, very interesting. So your own experiences then, when you're looking back on them, because one of the earlier questions, I guess, that I wanted to ask was the way you perceive these beings were a kind of daddy long leg. Well, I don't think either of us has a correct scientific term for that. We'll just call them daddy long legs.
Yes.
Hopefully that's a universal term in all languages. Any Chinese people watching this, could you please confirm that daddy long leg is whatever? Anyway, yes, I guess why was that, was that image something that you interpreted in your child mind psyche, or was it the actual form of these beings? And if so, why would they appear in a format? And then this opens up another question: why would they appear in a format that is going to disturb a child or going to frighten a child?
Okay, that's really good. Thank you. Because this is where I had my greatest amount of difficulty in understanding the memory. Why, if it's something good, is it starting out as a daddy long leg and scaring me? Okay, so there were two types of being in my memory. There were the not so helpful grays that were there first. I don't know what that was about or what they were doing to us. I just can see them now that they are in the house, one at my mother's side, one at my dad's, and one in the room with my sister and I. And they've got us all in blue beams except me. I'm not being held in a beam for some reason. I think that is purely thought form coming from these gray beings, because they wanted me to see it as a certain way. They did not. The orb itself is my soul family. They came in. I don't want to say it's a rescue. It's almost maybe to interrupt something, or maybe to make sure that they were seen so that I would remember this sometime. It's really confusing, but I think that they were an orb. I got a thought form that made them look to me like a daddy long leg, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's doing this kind of work, researching this. I think the more, it's a very true saying, the more that you know, the less that you realize you actually know. When you start out on this path, you think, well, I know it, I kind of know it all. It's when you advance and progress along this and accumulate more knowledge, then you begin to realize I've only got the tip of the iceberg. This is so complicated. It's not as simple as, oh, good and bad, or grays and whites, or whatever. There are so many facets to this. There are so many things, and there's still quite a lot of it that we don't understand. So it's absolutely fascinating. And I think I was saying to you when I was speaking with you through different media, like, are we ever going to get to the bottom of this here in our human lifetimes? Are we ever going to get a cosmic rule book, if you like? Well, to say, well, this happens like this, but on this occasion, kind of like the small print, the small print of spirituality and UFOlogy. You need to read the terms and conditions. But it's just so complicated and so thing. And I guess when you get one question answered, another two pop up in their place,
Yes.
don't they? It's
Yes.
just, yeah.
I had somebody actually say to me one time about the work that I do, about finding stuff out that, well, there's supposed to be mystery. We're not supposed to have all the answers. And I'm like, you don't get all the answers. You never. You answer one thing and three more doors open for you. So not to worry. By exploring your inner world, you're not, I can promise, you'll never get all the answers.
Yeah, that really is. It's a lifelong journey of seeking, exploring, of understanding, and I think that even when in your journey you'll come across information that you go, no, I don't believe that. I just can't buy that. That just seems too far fetched for me. Only to find 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever the case may be, a decade down the line, that information comes back again along your path. But because you have progressed and advanced to a certain thing, now you begin to see it in a different light.
Yes.
So I think that even if a lot of the stuff that maybe you're listening to, you're researching doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's not, because we all have our lessons here to learn. We're all here to experience different things. It may not be for you in your path. It may not be for you right away. So just leave it alone. It doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to, you're not going to fit everything into one tiny prepackaged box and go, right, that's it. So it is very helpful to, I think, to understand that. The other question I had to ask is that maybe a lot of people would be asking, you know, quite rightly so, like what's the connections? When we talk about spirituality, we talk about spirit and all that kind of thing. And I guess the traditional way of viewing spirit is something that isn't in the body. It's disembodied, it's a light being. And then we come to the topic of UFOs. And obviously, there's in the public consciousness, maybe not so much now, but there is this concept of, otherworldly beings traveling in physical craft, maybe an advanced technology that we have. But I guess we kind of know that once again, the more you kind of research this, you begin to blur the lines between these two things. So my question, I guess, was, when I was saying why would they have chosen to appear in that form, and I guess that what I'm trying to get at here is that, can you explain your understanding of what these beings are? Because we're talking about them as UFOs, or as extraterrestrials, but we're
Yeah.
also throwing in the concept of spirituality. How do these two seemingly separate terms, seemingly separate fields, what's the connection? How do they really combine with each other?
Oh, beautiful question. Beautiful question. The densities. It's because we exist throughout these different levels of density. And depending where you're at in that density will depend on whether you require hard material craft to travel in, or whether you can travel astrally and appear more like an orb. Uh, it's going to depend on where you are at in your abilities. Depend on where you're at on that the level of density. We're in third density, but apparently we have way more abilities than we use. But we're kind of a special case. What Shongu is sixth density is what I
Who's,
get.
who's
Shongu,
Shungu?
Shongu is what I call my soul family, and it's basically, even though you see many orbs in the picture, it's really just one energy. And during that time in early 2020, two words kept repeating themselves to me: Shongu and Shungite. And I finally went, "Is that your name?" And I get a yes. Fine, Shongu. That's weird, but okay, I'll keep it. Later on, I found out Shungite is a resonance stone, and it's a vibrational resonance stone. So interesting. So yeah, where were we again? I jumped all over.
Yeah. We were talking about this concept of densities, that these higher
Yes.
beings are in these kind of evolved states that we call densities, and therefore they're able to to appear to us in what we would think as a spirit. There doesn't really seem to be much difference of anything. It all seems to be just one thing. I think it's our limited understanding of this here that we think, oh, spirit, UFO, and really at the end of the day, the fact that these beings are able to um, change shape, appear visible to us, disappear, appear in these kind of orb formats,
Right.
tiny orbs, enormous orbs, would suggest that they are at a level that we would consider, even if I hate even using that, they would be at this kind of vibration or this state of consciousness that we would consider to be a spirit,
Mhm.
but it's just not quite like that.
Kathleen Martin's most recent book called Forbidden Knowledge, the second half of it is a group that is channeling the higher density beings, and they discuss this a little bit. The Law of One also discusses the difference and how they're able to travel depending on the density. But I think that is what we're a very populated universe. Everything is spirit, everything is creator, and we choose to materialize for an experience. That's why this is temporary and that's permanent. But we get all confused on this planet thinking this is that
Yeah.
spiritual stuff is the afterthought. Oh, we'll worry about that when we're dead. No, you need to worry about it now. Now, and this stuff that's happening here in the material realm is really just not that important, except that it's giving us lessons. So yes, they come as we're a populated universe. We have beings on many planets, in many star systems, across many universes and planes and dimensions and everything. And we're in relationship with each other because we all come from Creator. Creator created the eternal soul. Then the eternal soul goes and manifests. And I think that's where I was most confused most of my life. Everything was the material world more important. And then you just think about God and all of that later on, quietly to yourself, shh, kind of thing.
Brilliant. So I guess at this point we kind of need to talk about because we've kind of went over your life. I think I've pretty much covered all of this here, and any sort of questions is about these beings and stuff like that. And I guess anyone who's kind of listening to this and has been listening to it from the start will understand that I've mentioned that you actually have photographs and you actually documented a lot of this stuff in videos, and you've mentioned it yourself. You've captured a lot of this for years in videos, and you're actually going to share some of it with us now.
Sure. Love to. Okay. So share screen. And
Okay, so just explain to us what we're seeing here then.
all righty. Let me okay. Here, share. Oh, I see. Okay. So this one is about 2015. This is just a flurry of energetic activity going through my living room. I like the big white one there. That's why I pulled this in. That's Shangu. And I consider all the extra around it as part of the residual energy. The orb itself carries purpose. It carries communication. It's not actually carrying necessarily beings, but there's a crew on there. What is represented in there is my higher self, as well as either other aspects of other lifetimes that I have been, or others that I have crossed in other lifetimes that I've been. I have done a count of there are more than 99, but I am only familiar with 32
Okay.
that I know. And then so that goes through. You'll see a bunch of these go around and fly up from different places. Now, I have realized why there are so many and why they're kind of blinking all over the place.
Mhm.
That's what we want is peace.
Part of the shamanic work that we do is retrieving soul fragments. So in in questioning, I finally determined, could this, because what the orbs do is reflect what emotional state you're in. They also reflect whatever's going on with you. You're in relationship communication with something beyond the veil.
Peace.
And for me, it is with my higher self and my soul family, but I'm not going to guarantee that with everyone. So I've kind of lost my train of thought there. Let me see if I can find another. I don't know how I get out of full screen. Another one of these.
Oh, apologies. We've just kind of lost Sonia. I tried to we had multiple videos there, and I'm slowing down the connection. So hopefully she's going to join us again in one little second. As we just wait patiently for her. Oh, yep, there she is.
Sorry. So I guess you can't just grab stuff.
No,
Okay.
no, I think it was my fault because I was just explaining we had two different videos. I tried to add your video and then you added it as well, and it slowed the connection down.
Oh,
so I tried to remove them. It kicked everything from the screen.
Okay. So that was basically the video that I was showing. That was many orbs. Today, they're more solid into one, and I'll see if I can find that one. Nope, that's not going to be it. Well, actually, because I couldn't get all of these. It wouldn't watch everything. But what I found, I'm going to open this one because this is an unusual one, was that when they start to coalesce into one, it's evidence that the soul fragments have returned. That's part of what their evidence is. And here's another one, though, that shows, I don't know if you can bring that up.
Okay, I didn't want to touch anything in case.
No. Okay, there it is. Okay. Nope, that's the exact. Oh, it's only giving me the same one. Okay, I know what it is, because this is what it has me do. It has me go in and get them out of the folder that I have here, and then I have to move them.
There's multiple. I mean, you can see they're all, like, how many is that? That's all different. That's crazy.
There's many, 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 and I wasn't able to show you. Here's another one. Let's see. You remove one from the studio, and then you have to add another one. So let's add you one. Here's a good one.
Where was that filmed?
That is here in Oregon. Are you able to see that one on screen share? No, I don't know why it's not sharing now. It only let me share that one for some reason. Oh, well. And it won't let me do slides either. It's very strange. I don't want to hit screen share again, because if I do, I'll lose you. But you can go to my website and you can see all of these videos, many of these videos and more. And I will be putting more up there. I've got some updates to do, and I'm trying to create just one long stream movie with as many of them in there as I can get, just with some background music to show that off. But yeah, it's kind of difficult to bring them up. They're in different formats and stuff, and hopefully I'll be able to get them onto iMovie Maker or something.
Yeah, obviously this was an experiment. We haven't tried this out, and I haven't had anyone on the show who's wanted to show some of their stuff. So unfortunately, we didn't get the opportunity to practice beforehand. But even the fact that you had that video there, and the phenomenons you can see in that, even playing it back, and I've seen it before, but just kind of watching it again, and it's incredible just to see these objects of different sizes, of different, I don't know, some of them even seem brighter, just appear in your screen. But as you say, anyone who's interested, you only have to go to your website and look through some of your posts, and you've obviously made some of them available, and hopefully, as you mentioned, you're going to be making more of them.
Yes, I'll be getting back to work. I kind of took a break after I finished the last one, because it was a lot of work to get that out there and get it straight for once, because all of this is very circular. All of this, we're in a linear world and we think things need to happen, boom, 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 boom. But when you're in the esoteric world, it doesn't happen like that. And so it can be really confusing. I encourage people, though, that have experiences, write them down, find people to talk to about them, share your story with somebody that's not going to judge you.
Yeah, I think that was my understanding from you as well. Is that you were largely on your own for a while. I don't think because you'd mentioned to your family that this is what you do, this is what you believe, and you've made these public, and I don't think there was a great deal of support for this. Hopefully she'll be back again. We seem to have froze.
Oh,
Can you
I'm
hear
here.
me? That's
Yes, I
okay.
can.
Yeah, so there wasn't my understanding from what you've told me is there wasn't a great deal of support. There wasn't a network of people that were supportive of you, certainly not your family, but thankfully, you've found, a group, you found, someone or a group of people that don't think that you're telling lies, don't think that you're making things up, and do actually believe you and have been through something similar yourself, which is incredibly important. It really is to have something like that. So I don't know if that's anything that you could talk about, or what you found out. Maybe even if that's a bit of a question, what you've kind of found out, maybe more information that have validated your experiences.
Definitely. I did have to find a way to validate for myself my reality. And you can't really have somebody else tell you, oh yeah, what you're seeing is this or that. Even another experiencer, because they have only their experience to go by. But I did, with my family, there was a lot of reluctance. And my kids don't really know any of this. They don't ascribe to any of it. My father is still alive and he knows of the website, but I don't think he thinks too much of it. I do have cousins, however, on my mother's side of the family, and this is the sensitive side. We had, of my aunts and uncles, one of them was a channeler, one of them was a medium, and most of them all were sensitive. My mother had 9 brothers, 8 brothers and sisters. And I can see now today some of the things my mother said, which show that she was a sensitive also. So I come from that lineage. So it was with them, also with the condition that I have, because they're saying it could be a genetic disorder. I was concerned for that family in particular. And in explaining all of this, or trying to share this with them, one cousin is enjoying it and started reading the website. A couple of others kind of backed off from it, because it brings up stuff for them as well. And I noticed that Peter Maxwell Slattery is one that gets a lot of orb activity, and he gets a lot of UFO activity. He's one that talked about his family also has experiences, but they don't share them. There's something about that that's kind of weird. But about the lineage, and again, about why UFOs, why we would be being contacted by these higher density beings, whether it be in a spirit form or an actual UFO, it has to do with the fact that we have made this planet so toxic, so unlivable, even for ourselves. We have these teeny tiny short lives in which to learn our lessons and hopefully ascend. They are here to warn us and to help us. And they have been trying to reach us and tell us about these things for a very long time. We know that with the raw material, with Francis Swan, with so many others. So it's not that you have to be anybody special. Nobody is special on this planet. They're coming to all of us, but we don't necessarily believe what we see. And that's the trick right there, is when you can stop putting material world first, or material doubt first, and go straight to spirit first, because you can always debunk spirit with material later. Go to spirit first. and you get a whole lot more hope that way.
Yeah, fantastic. I guess a lot of people, who once again aren't first in this, well, why don't they just land? Why don't they just come and announce themselves instead of this kind of cryptic, oh, that was an orb there. What was that experience of seeing this kind of being that I interpret as a daddy long leg? Why this kind of crypticness? Why not just come and turn around and say, here we are, come in peace. This is what I look like. You know, um, Obviously there's very good reasons for that, but I would love to hear your take on it.
Free will. Free will. They would be violating our free will to just show up. We are all in a different place on this issue, all in different places on the issue of God. And to just arrive would do harm. And because we're in a free will matrix, the good guys, they just can't do that. They can't bring themselves to do that. So they can only do it one on one or small groups. When that small group is cohesive, like the Council of Eight one, or what L&L Research do, a little cohesive unit, they can start doing it that way. What they're doing is they are preparing us right now. As we start to embrace this more and more, just suspend the disbelief and embrace it more, we see more. I get more activity when I oh yes, that's it. And then something else will come. And I really encourage to suspend that disbelief, and more activity will come, and meditate on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant. I guess, well, what is it they're trying to achieve? To achieve to make us aware that we're not alone in the universe. Is that what their message is? Is this why you're experiencing this? And to understand that, you know, there is a spiritual, or what we would call a spiritual realm, that there is these higher vibrational realities out there that do exist after we transition from this body. Is that simply what their message is, to let us know of their existence, or is there something else?
I believe, yes, to let us know of their existence, but I also believe that they also have their own agendas. They too are evolving. And part of their job is working with us, or just as it is our job to care for the earth and the animals on the earth. Their duty is to care and love us and help us by not violating our free will, which that's got to be really hard, and just guide us gently as they guide us. If we can win this, if we can win this planet back, we can get into fourth density, they all ascend as well. And so we're moving through that infinite spiral, but it's like we're at a bottleneck, and with the earth beings, and we need earth beings to just wake up, everybody, so we can get moving again. And through that's what I feel. Yeah.
One of the things you touched on earlier, which I never really elaborated, when you were talking about this concept of the wanderer as being this kind of star seed, or this kind of old soul. What has that got to do with these beings that are coming now? Are they saying, well, you're really one of us? How does that kind of work? Well, I'm not really one of you, because I'm here now, so I'm a human being. When I leave this reality, then I'm a spiritual being or whatever. So how does that work? What is the difference then between these concepts, this star seed and these old souls?
I honestly don't think there's a huge difference. I mean, I think the way that I'm learning this is, it's very strange, because we have to get into the theory of creator gods, that the higher density beings are able to create forms that then we choose to inhabit. And we do this all over the universe. We're just so blinded on Earth that we always tend to bring it back down here. Like, why us? Why us? No, they're doing it everywhere else too. But there are forces out there. There are universal forces, and the negative forces have their duty. Their duty is to enslave and control. The duty of The positive path is to be of service to others. And it's what God created for us. It's what Creator gave us in order to give us these many, many lessons that we'll have until we get to a certain level. And then we start it all over again.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that I can conceptualize it, embrace it for myself, that because nothing's going to end. We're going to end up doing, Zenith, we're going to be on another planet doing this thing again somewhere, because we totally choose to come in and do this. We may have come from a higher density, chose to come down to this density because we know it will hurl us across. We'll go to the end of fourth density if we get this right. We don't have to be at the beginning of fourth. We get to hurl ourselves to the end. And I think that's kind of the competitive spirit of the universe.
And that's obviously, you're talking about the planetary population as a whole rather than just me and you and a few others. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Why we come here to be of service, to help all the rest of the people who you're talking about there to understand and embrace this, to recognize their birthright, to recognize the reality of their thing. This is why we choose to come here. I think is what you're trying to what you're trying to say, is what you are saying. Yeah, it's such a fascinating and multifaceted thing, and I guess the subject of negative beings is a very controversial one, because there's a lot of people, reject that and think that it's simply, can't conceive of that, can't conceive of whenever you cross over, or you exist at a higher vibrational awareness and a higher density. And I guess a density should be explained as a higher vibration of light,
Right.
In which your consciousness, is so much more expanded than what we currently experience. So we're able to enjoy this greater awareness of light, and we're able to use light in a way that we can't at this level. But it's hard for people to imagine that when you cross over, that there would be anything such as negative. Why would there be any negative beings when you're crossing over, and something that I kind of struggled with a long time. And why don't we hear from when people are channeling and mediumship and stuff like that? Why don't negative beings come through? But I guess the thing that I always say to people, or to think that, well, if they showed their hand to everyone, then you would know about them. Then you would know how to guard against them. You would know to think. If you just think that well, what you're going through is just a normal thing, is an illness, is a negative thought, it's just your own self, then you're not going to be on your guard. You're not going to think. If they just came in and went, haha, yeah, I'm a negative being and I'm just going to do this, you're automatically going to go, was that about, try and take action against it. So I guess it's like that famous statement in, what do you call that film now? Oh, I can see the cover at my mind, and I can't get it now. The Usual Suspects.
Oh yeah.
Where they say the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he doesn't exist. So I think in a way it could very much relate to these negative beings. The greatest trick that they have pulled is convincing the world that there is no such thing. So they're able then to continue their negative work to stop us, from achieving our birthright.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard to understand that. Well, when we come from a concept that God created heaven and hell, then it gets very confusing. But the concept that we as incarnate beings energetically create the negative makes more sense to me. That it's either neutral or benevolent, but we're the creators of that which is negative, which then gets life form. It becomes a thought form. Any thought we think as an energy that's put out there. I think that's what they're trying to teach us in the raw material, that you're putting that energy out there, it's going to become a thought form. And that's how negative exists. Not, yes, the creator created the duality, but he doesn't necessarily create that negative person. That negative person comes from our own collective energies, which is what God is. It's so it's these are very hard concepts, and people get very mad at me when people with Christian backgrounds get very angry with me when I go down this track, because I didn't start with the Bible. I started with the Law of One and made my way around to biblical verses.
Yeah. I guess that's why, in our well, we're speaking here of the Christian faith, but because I'm not an expert, I'm not well versed in in other religions, not well enough to know them. But I guess that's where we get our concept of heaven and hell from. In today's era, in today's year of 2022, the Vatican and most of the other denominations in the Christian faith have, sort of come and turned around and said, like, there is no hell, there is no such figure as the devil. But we have to understand where that concept came from. And I think a lot of that it was wrapped up in mystery to say, well, we have a positive and we have a negative at the end of the day. So the positive is obviously heaven and the negative is obviously hell. And I think that's where those terms originated from, or where we came to believe them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess this is all amazing, and for people then who want to look at more of this stuff, who want to read your posts in depth, and assimilate this knowledge for themselves, where can they go? Where can they see your videos? Where can they see these pictures that you've already shared and that you're going to be sharing even more of?
My website, childofhamelin.com, is where I'm putting everything right now. And that's pretty much the only location, because it's working. We could click on the videos and they play. And you can reach me, you can email me through that site. Feel free to talk to me about your story. I can hold it in confidence. I also encourage people, there are support groups out there for contactees, abductees. If you feel that you have had contact, you can search those out as well.
Brilliant. So what is the plans for the future? Because I know that you were maybe talking about maybe moving beyond the kind of blog format and maybe doing something a little different. Because it's obviously the journey that I started out on, and I never thought I would have any of this, and never wanted any of it. And lo and behold, it's just been put into my path while you're doing it. So I know that you've kind of considered that, and you've kind of made noises as to maybe you might expand beyond that.
You've been such an influence on me. You really have. I do get it. Part of the reason for me putting it in a written blog is I was trying to hide in plain sight. I really didn't want anybody to see it. I'm just going to put it out here. Nobody will see it. But you did. And but yes, I would like to find another way to present my information. So I'm going to go in and try to do a movie with just those orb videos. Then I'm just going to continue my work in meditation to see what clues that will give me. I'm using the Gateway Experience modules, which is what the US government used to train their remote viewers. So I'm using that same training for myself to go deeper into the memories, maybe create a protocol for myself that I could share on the website. And if other people wanted to try it, they could try it. Just ways of being able to meditate and connect. So basically, I'm going to continue being just what I am, just an experiencer trying to share the word and share as many pictures as I can get, and hopefully get other people to do the same.
Yeah, that's what was going to be my next question. In regards to maybe branching out a bit or something. I think it's important, the work that you're doing, the experiences that you're sharing, because it lets other people know. Hey, even myself. As you'll know, because I when reading your posts and talking to you, I was kind of like reminiscing and thinking about my own childhood and going, God, I wonder, I have this kind of strange memories that kind of, have been rumbling around my head since childhood, the same memories, even dreams that just kept occurring, and they were all very symbolic. And I think I mentioned it one time, there's just this sense of missing time in my life. So it's an area of my life I'm now kind of looking back on, where I've just completely discarded, because I'm always looking towards the future. But now, because of your work and the influence that you've had on me, I'm actually re-examining my own childhood and looking back and going, God, there's something in that. I wonder, is there anything in my kind of long forgotten childhood and the kind of strange kind of things that I've experienced. Is there memories there that I need to reclaim? So if that's had the impact, on me, I'm sure that there's other people out there who, will be looking at your work and going, God, I wonder about my own past. So I'm wondering, maybe is there a way that you can be of an influence in a different format, like some sort of audio format or some sort of podcast, even some sort of radio host or something, or even giving live talks about this type of thing. I think that there'd be people that maybe would be drawn to that. I know it's my experience whenever I've been kind of doing live talks and I've been talking about this kind of idea of being a soul from other places and the uh, is a dislocation that you feel between this planet or whatever. And there's people who have come on and joined and said, yeah, I'm at that stage, or yes, I've kind of been at that. So I'm just kind of wondering, is there kind of a market there for you, a kind of niche in which you could do something like that there?
It's interesting thought. I mean, I put myself out there, not in the sense that it would be marketed for money per se, but to market it as an idea. And I have met more people. I met you this way. I have met some others, and what I've also noticed is by watching people like Peter Maxwell Slattery, Kathleen Martin, so forth. They started out just like you and I are right now, with maybe a little interview or a little podcast or a little blog or something, and just kept working at putting their content out there to share. And I believe that the beautiful many will send the right people to see what's there. And here we go.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, look, Sonia, we're going to wrap this up because I've actually just looked at the lighting on my thing, and I think I'm actually turning into some sort of extraterrestrial being the more that this light fades upon me. So, look, it was just before you go, and it's been an absolute pleasure, an absolute honor to have interview you. And you're just such a quirky, funny character that I could just sit and listen to you all day. And I really do hope that comes across for other people who are viewing this once it eventually gets released in a more kind of public format. I'm sure that it will be a popular video and many people will be attracted to your personality. But is there one kind of thing that you could sum up, one kind of experience that, or one sort of key concept, or truth, or something of an inspiration that could sum up through it all your experiences and what you have experienced and been through for people who are starting up on this path?
Yes. Yeah, it's the one thing that I would say is that no one else can validate for you what the content of your experience is. And in like manner, that means that no one can detract from your experience, invalidate it in any way whatsoever. It is your experience, and embrace it, and then more magic will come.
Yeah, you're the experiencer of your experiences.
Good one. Love it. Title of our next book.
Title of your book. Sonia, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. And it's been an honor interviewing you. This is kind of the first full-length conversation that we've had with each other. We've had, numerous texts back and forth. We've shared numerous audio messages, and we've just kind of branched out into sending each other video messages. But this is the first time that we've actually sat down face to face, and I really do. I knew that you were going to be a great guest, and I'm so happy to have you on, and such an inspiration. You inspire me, and never mind me inspiring you. But again, that's the connection between us. And I guess before you go, that connection is obviously congruency. So
absolutely.
The better.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sonia, I will see you in the airwaves.
Yes, you will. Thank you, Zenith, and blessings to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.